Incredible twist. Single dad fails interview, then millionaire CEO reveals. Surprising opportunity. Jake stood in front of the glossy glass building, anxiety coiling around him like a python. The city buzzed with life, but inside him, a storm raged. 2 years had passed since Lucy's smile faded away, yet it felt like the clock had stopped. This interview was everything. The golden ticket to lift his children, Mia and Leo, out of their grim routine. But standing there, he could almost hear his heart beating in protest against the dream he yearned for. He had spent countless nights working shifts at the diner, scraping together what little he could to feed and clothe his kids. The empty fridge and bare cupboards, the loneliness wrapped in silence, each reminder was a heavy anchor weighing him down. A solid 9-to-5 job was what he needed to restore some semblance of normalcy. Hope had blossomed in him when the email for an interview arrived, but the gnawing doubt quickly followed. Could he actually do this? As he sat in the conference room, slick men and women scrutinized him with polite smiles painted over disappointment. Jake fumbled his answers, speaking over his own thoughts. Just a chance, he reminded himself. But each moment that passed felt like an eternity in helplessness. What if they truly saw him? What if his inadequacies revealed themselves in the way he stuttered and faltered? He desperately wanted to show them he was more than a single dad, but he felt as if he had brought only remnants of himself to that table. After what felt like a lifetime, it was over. The whispers of rejection surrounded him as he left the building, crumbling inside as he walked, shoulders slumped in defeat. He'd failed again. Another dream dashed, another opportunity lost. His children deserved better, yet here he was, staring into the bleakness of a future he feared he couldn't change. Suddenly, someone called out to him. "Hey, you all right?" It was Mark, the millionaire CEO whose story Jake had often heard, the kind of success that felt unattainable. Instead of sneering or hurrying past, Mark stopped, genuinely intrigued by Jake's expression of anguish. Jake found himself spilling out his broken thoughts in a rush, each word heavier than the next. "I just wanted to prove I could be more for my kids. I thought I could change our lives," he admitted, the frustration spilling into tears he couldn't stifle. Mark listened intently, an attentive ear to his struggles, revealing a glimpse of encouragement beneath the cold exterior of corporate success. "You know," Mark began, "there's a mentorship program designed for individuals like you, people who are struggling but have so much potential." Jake felt the words wash over him, a mix of hope and embarrassment. How could he accept help? Wouldn't it mean admitting he wasn't enough on his own? Yet the thought of finally providing more for Mia and Leo stirred something deep within him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake felt a battle brewing inside. The choice before him was monumental. With each passing second, he could almost hear the whispers of his insecurities, clawing at his mind, demanding he turn back, retreat into his shell. He envisioned the life-changing possibility of mentoring, not just for himself, but for others who faced the same darkness. What if he could help shift things for other kids too? But as thoughts spiraled, the question hung ominously. Could he trust this new path? Could he reshape his story into something better? With disbelief tugging at his spirit, the worry of failing again loomed large as he stared at the trembling foundation of his dreams. With all these thoughts crashing around him, Jake stood on the precipice, the urgency of the moment prompting him to decide. Would he take a chance, or continue to carry the weight of his failures? The world outside continued its jittery pace, and Jake's heart raced, caught between the fear of trying once more and the desire to change everything. Jake felt the weight of Mark's gaze, as if he were calibrating an unseen scale of potential against the backdrop of his failures. He had never been one to seek help, having learned early on to pull himself through the darkest moments. Yet, here was an opportunity to change everything. Not just for himself, but for Mia and Leo. Could this mentoring program be the lifeline he had been yearning for? He nodded, albeit hesitantly. I'll consider it, he managed to say, feeling the internal clash of pride and desperation. Mark's soft smile ignited something in him. For the first time in a while, Jake felt someone other than himself rooting for his success. It made the fear a little less suffocating. Days passed as Jake wrestled with his decision. The routine of his life, picking up Mia and Leo from school, managing the diner at night, felt strangely quieter, as if the universe was granting him time for introspection. Each mundane task was now painted with a new depth of significance. Every moment spent with his children was intertwined with visions of what they could become together as a family thriving instead of surviving. Finally, on a chilly Tuesday morning, he set out for Mark's office, the meeting point for the mentorship program. Each step felt monumental, as if he were crossing a threshold into a new life. As he stood in front of the polished door, the faint echoes of his heartbeat echoed in his ears. Steeling himself, he pushed it open and walked in. The room was filled with bright faces eager to share. The atmosphere buzzed with enthusiasm, a distinct contrast to the sterile environment of his interview. He took a seat, feeling awkward among people who all seemed so comfortable in their own skin. But soon, the awkwardness began to fade as Mark introduced him to the group, explaining his journey, the struggle, the hope, and most importantly, the resolve. During their first exercise, they were asked to share their stories. Jake's palms grew clammy. The truth of his life unfolded under the watchful eyes of strangers. The painful memories of Lucy, the nights spent lying awake worrying about bills. It felt cathartic to voice it all. For the first time, he heard others echoing his sentiments of fear and self-doubt. And slowly, he began to comprehend that he wasn't alone. This realization opened something within him, a reservoir of unresolved capabilities. A part of him remembered the direction he once had, the passion he harbored for storytelling, a gift that had been buried beneath the relentless responsibilities of parenthood. As the group continued sharing feedback and encouragement, Jake felt invigorated and saw a pathway forming, one that could integrate his aspirations with his newfound resolve. Throughout the next few weeks, Jake immersed himself in the mentorship, confronting not only his deepest fears, but also rediscovering aspects of himself long forgotten. There were sessions filled with group dynamics, leadership activities, and one-on-one discussions that challenged him to think differently about his skill set. The skills he forged slowly began to surface, and the more he engaged, the more he recognized the strength found in vulnerability. But as much as he grew, beneath it all lurked a whisper of discontent. The still raw sting of failure remained. Could he transfer this remarkable energy to his parenting? Each lesson he learned felt like a balancing act, and he grappled with the challenge of integrating this newfound ambition into his home life. As he stared at the photos of Lucy and his children that dominated his home, an unsettling question clouded his newfound clarity. If he dared to chase his dreams, who would fill the role of the present father they so desperately needed? The turning point approached. He had learned so much, yet with every step forward, there loomed the specter of hesitation. Would embracing change threaten the stability that Mia and Leo craved? The moment was nigh for him to confront that uncertainty, and ultimately choose not just for himself, but for his children too. The stakes grew ever higher, and Jake knew it was time for the real trial. Would he risk the familiar for the promise of transformation? Jake awoke to the hum of the coffee maker, the familiar gurgling sound intertwining with his thoughts. It felt like a ritual, one he had performed countless times, but today it seemed laden with expectation. As the brew filled the pot, He pondered the implied promises of the upcoming meeting, a mere step forward in his burgeoning journey. He sat quietly at the kitchen table, scanning the remnants of last night's takeout. It was the quintessential tableau of single parenthood. A crumpled juice box lay abandoned next to his laptop, a reminder of tangled priorities. Today they would be discussing personal goals, their breadth and implications. Yet it was hard to shake off the unease creeping into his mind. The deeper he delved into this exploration of self, the more he feared the fissures it might create beneath the surface of their family life. Mia and Leo bounded into the room, their laughter echoing off the walls, momentary distractions from Jake's turbulent thoughts. Watching them ignited a flame of warmth, but also churned a complex mixture of guilt and urgency within him. Were they too young to understand if he decided to make changes? He felt torn between wanting more for himself and fearing the shifts it might create in their world. The mentorship session began with Mark addressing the group, his tone imbued with motivation. The scheduled activities mirrored Jake's conflicts, strategic problem-solving exercises that veered perilously close to reflection on one's values and life roles. During a brainstorming session on life plans, Jake hesitated as he felt the weight of an unasked question pressing into his chest. He knew others were grappling with similar doubts, not just about careers, but about their commitments to family and legacy. Could his ambitions coexist with the responsibilities he had? The question tumbled around like a marbles in his mind, creating disordered pathways of thought. He found himself doodling aimless shapes during discussions, a clear manifestation of his struggle to connect his aspirations to his present reality. He wanted to share, but fear of judgment kept his voice trapped beneath the heavy veneer of self-criticism. When it came time for personal reflections, Jake braced himself. It felt like a moment of collective vulnerability. As other participants voiced their dreams and ambitions, he found an unexpected strength as he listened to their stories of overcoming adversity. Each anecdote stirred a deeper resolve within him, igniting his long-dormant passion for storytelling. Then, as if a dam burst, he felt the urge to step forward. "I haven't shared much yet," he confessed, the words tumbling out. "But my dream is to write. I want to tell stories that matter, stories that could inspire others." The admission hung in the air, raw and unrefined. No sooner had the words escaped than he felt exposed, but a fragile relief washed over him. The encouragement he received from his peers was overwhelming. He realized they were rooting for him. They could see the spark hidden beneath his layers of self-doubt. But as he glanced at their faces, he felt a crippling realization settle in like a shroud. Storytelling requires honesty, a willingness to confront all facets of oneself, fears, regrets, and the darker corners of his past. The balance began to feel more precarious. Each shared narrative pulled at his heart, highlighting a disconnect between his ambition and the tangible reality waiting at home. What if he failed? What if pursuing his voice came at the cost of the stability Mia and Leo so desperately needed? As he returned home that evening, he reflected on the space he had uncovered within himself, but also contemplated the shadows lurking just outside his line of sight. The longing to create, to rediscover purpose, threatened to cloud his judgment. Standing by the front door, a thought slammed into him. Could he genuinely embrace this potential without tearing apart the delicate fabric of his family's life? The time had come to face the challenges of reconciling his past, present, and aspirations. Yet, with every second, the doubts festered. Navigating this path could result in changes that might unravel the very stability he wished to maintain. The clock was ticking. The pull toward change had become irresistible. Jake's journey had only just begun, but the real trial was ahead. What sacrifices needed to be made for a future worth pursuing? The morning light poured through the windows like a promise, but Jake felt its warmth without absorbing its glow. As he sipped the lukewarm coffee, he clutched a single sheet of paper. It outlined the task ahead, a submission of potential story ideas for the local magazine he had long admired. Each title he brainstormed evoked enthusiasm momentarily, but with it came the gnawing self-doubt. What if they mock his work? What if his words failed to resonate? For every inventive plot twist that tickled his mind, an equally crushing wave of concern washed over him. The stakes felt as monumental as a job interview. This was him, a single father with obligations, trying to claw back a semblance of identity beyond fatherhood and mundane routines. The kids were already in the living room, their voices rising and falling like the tides. He watched as Leo animatedly explained a game's story mechanics to Mia, her eyes wide with fascination. Their laughter resonated in the corners of the room, and in that fleeting moment, Jake felt the pull of togetherness. Nevertheless, it weighed lightly against the existential rift daring him to leap toward the unknown. He attempted to jot down sentences on that blank page, but his pencil sputtered as his thoughts ran dry. Each line felt disconnected from the euphoria he envisioned, a colorful tapestry of adventures waiting to be unfurled. As frustration bubbled within him, he slammed the pencil onto the table, causing Mia to look up with curiosity. Her soft gaze broke his train of thought, and he remembered the intimate connection he wished to protect. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, her concern etched into her fragile features. "I'm just trying to write a story," he replied, forcing a smile. It didn't sit right. Could he extend the truth without feeling like he was lying? The essence of writing, as he now understood, was every emotion laid bare. The conflicting desire to shield their innocence collided with his need to follow his ambitions. With renewed determination, he made a plan. It wasn't about blocking out his kids, but involving them. A storytelling session could encourage creativity, where they would blend their ideas into a fabrication of adventures. This way, Jake would get to explore worlds together with them while rekindling his passion. Later that afternoon, he gathered them on the living room floor among scattered crayons and plush toys. "How about we create a story together?" Jake proposed, love flickering in his voice like a candle's flicker. "Like what?" Leo leaned in, excitement bubbling through him. "Like a hero who saves a kingdom and befriends a dragon," Jake announced, allowing a theatrical flair to dance in his tone. Mia's face lit up. "Can the dragon be purple and breathe rainbows?" "Yes, and maybe the hero has a magical sword made of chocolate." As their ideas flowed, a current of creativity surged through Jake. They embraced wild narratives, navigating landscapes of imagination that felt liberating. The kids laughed, exchanging ideas like seasoned collaborators, and Jake realized the impact of their collective enthusiasm. But the deeper he delved into their playful fantasies, the more he felt tethered to their reality. Was he just a wishful thinker, drawing inspiration from his children? Or was he genuinely crafting something larger? Mixing small, heartfelt tales with darker personal truths suddenly seemed daunting. Each flutter of excitement gave way to pressing doubts about whether he could weave his inner conflict into his work. That evening, after the children drifted off to sleep, Jake stared at the previously blank paper. It was now marked with scratches of half-baked plots, flourishes of ideas, and doodles that echoed the voices of his young companions. Yet, a glaring emptiness loomed, a subtle reminder that true storytelling required more than festive ideas. How could he inject honesty about his struggles without losing the light-hearted essence he cherished? He leaned back, fingers smeared with ink. Altering the narrative of his family might be a precarious endeavor, one that danced tantalizingly close to upheaval. The dawn of a new day felt inevitable, yet fraught with uncertainty. He could either hide behind the stories of a carefree hero, or dare to transport his audience through the intricacies of his own life. With the enormity of the decision pressing down on him, he thought back to the morning's hesitation. Could he confront the shadows he feared revealing? Tomorrow would hold the weight of that choice, and the heart of his journey beckoned for clarity. Would he embrace vulnerability, or shield himself from the repercussions of truth? The moment for revelation was edging closer, tempting him to confront the line between storytelling and authenticity. Jake awoke to the persistent chirping of morning birds, a stark contrast to the tempest of thoughts swirling in his mind. The day had arrived, and with it, a magnitude of uncertainty loomed heavy in the air. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and recalled the weighty question that had been pressing down on his chest since last night. How could he balance the light-hearted fantasies his children envisioned with the authentic challenges of his own life? Determined, he picked up the sheet of paper, his canvas of hopes and fears. In the bright sunlight, it felt both inviting and menacing, promising a new beginning, while demanding a level of honesty he wasn't sure he could confront. As he stared at the disjointed scribbles of ideas, a distinct realization hit him. He had been avoiding the very essence of storytelling, the raw truths that connect people through shared experiences. With a renewed sense of urgency, Jake grabbed a fresh page and began contemplating his own story. What if his hero was a father grappling with loss, fear, and a desperate desire to protect his children? What if he let his characters reflect his struggles, helping him navigate the complexities of parenthood and personal goals? The ink flowed more freely now, his fears transforming into words that resonated with unvarnished authenticity. Here was the crux of his storytelling evolution. He could weave humor and imagination with the trials of fatherhood while retaining a sense of honesty. The pivotal moment would be facing his vulnerabilities, rather than running from them. Could he engage his children not only as co-creators, but as inspirations for the emotional depth he wanted to explore? He glanced towards the living room where his children still slept, their serene breaths echoing his resolve. Would they understand the balance he sought to strike between fiction and his reality? Perhaps they were more perceptive than he gave them credit for. Children hold a remarkable ability to grasp emotions, especially when they see them mirrored in their parents. With this thought simmering, Jake decided to integrate their youthful characters into the narrative, embodying both the whimsical dreams of childhood and the weight of adult challenges. He scribbled a new story idea where the hero confronts a dreaded shadow, the embodiment of his deepest fears, representing his struggles and aspirations. The twist? This hero had children, who, through their imaginative lenses, offered hope and solutions, serving as catalysts for change. Later that morning, energized by his notes and plan, he ventured into the living room and sat beside Leo and Mia, who were still lounging on the couch. "How about we work on our story together again?" Jake inquired, his excitement palpable. The children's eyes sparkled at the prospect of another adventure. "Can our hero be a dad this time?" Leo asked curiously. "Absolutely, and he'll be facing a shadow that tries to scare him," Jake added, nudging them into the deeper narrative he had crafted. They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, their creativity bouncing off one another like a vibrant game of catch. Every suggestion spun into a complex web of excitement, all while Jake subtly infused his own dilemmas into the plot. As they crafted this new adventure, he began to recognize his children as not merely participants, but as guiding lights in this quest for authenticity. Yet, amid the buzz of creativity, a chilling thought crept back into his mind. What if the magazine rejected his work? What if he laid bare his soul only to find it dismissed by others? Would that rejection shatter the connection he was forging with Leo and Mia? Still, the hour passed quickly, their laughter merging with the vibrant energy of the stories they conjured. By the end of their session, he realized he had unraveled a piece of his own journey through their collaborative spirit. With the sun dipping lower in the sky, signifying countless hours spent in joy, he felt a renewed commitment to both his craft and his parenting. Today was only a glimpse into what was to come, but that feeling, the creeping dread tinged with hope, launched a new adventure. As bedtime approached, he retreated to his writing nook, with the question lingering ominously, calling out for an answer. Could he truly reveal his vulnerabilities to the world without fear? And would those wanting to read about him accept the imperfect truths he intended to share? He could no longer hide behind mere fictional characters. The moment of truth was approaching fast, one where he would need to decide if he would step into the light or stay cloaked in shadows. An idea struck him as he penned the final notes of the night. What if he wrote a letter to the editor but kept it tucked away until the very last moment? The evening settled in, his thoughts racing, and the realization dawned. His tale was just beginning. Would he gather the courage to share his journey, revealing the truths that danced so close to his heart? The challenge had birthed itself, and the question lingered. When would he take the leap? Jake awoke the next morning with an unsettling blend of excitement and dread spiraling through him. The letter to the editor loomed larger than ever in his mind, a testament to his ambitions and fears. Would he become the writer he envisioned, or was he destined to remain a mere spectator of his dreams? Determined to transform that inner chaos into clarity, he stationed himself in his writing nook, surrounded by pages of hastily scribbled thoughts. The shadows of self-doubt whispered menacingly in the corners of his mind, threatening to drown out the eagerness that bubbled within. Each word he wrote felt like stepping onto a tightrope suspended over an abyss. One misstep, and it could all come crashing down. Instead of succumbing to those fears, Jake leaned into them. What if he wrote not just for the editor, but for himself? What if this was more than just a piece meant for publication, but a way to solidify his own journey through the darkness, to emerge on the other side with courage and purpose? With that thought, he began to write fervently, weaving those personal truths into the story of a father overshadowed by doubt, yet driven by love. He paused mid-sentence, considering what he could reveal about his struggles. The fear of judgment from peers hung over him like an ominous cloud, yet so did the hope that honesty could resonate. What if he described the messiness of parenting, the midnight cries and weary eyes? Suddenly, it felt crucial to be raw and real, laying bare the dichotomy between a charming children's world and the harshness of adult life. When the children rustled in from their dreams, he found a spark of inspiration igniting anew. Leo, with his wild imaginative spirit, could propel the narrative further. Mia's poignant wisdom could bring depth to their hero's transformation. "Hey kids," he called out, eager to engage them again, yearning for a collaboration that wasn't just play. "What do you think makes someone really brave?" Mia scrunched her eyebrows together, contemplating the question. "Kids who always listen to their parents could be brave," she suggested earnestly. "Or kids who go on adventures even when they're scared," Leo chimed in. Jake marveled at their perspectives, noting how they framed truth and bravery through their innocent lenses. Now, this narrative was no longer simply a story. It was a reflection of the courage he sought to embody, emphasizing the ridicule that could come from failure, the need for a guiding light. He could reveal the vulnerability he so desperately wanted to shield from the world. Encouraged by their conversation, Jake dove back into his writing. The father character would become a mirror of his own fears, replete with the struggle to make a living while nurturing creative dreams. Would he lose his children in the process? Or could they know that it was courage in the face of fear that would ultimately lead to success? But with each stroke of the pen, nagging doubts returned, whispering painfully of inadequacy. How would he manage the magazine's expectations? Was his story compelling enough to warrant attention and willingness to face the editor? The intersection of his life and work echoed louder now. Each draft became not just a composition, but a stepping stone toward confronting his vulnerabilities. Yet, questions hounded him. His fears of rejection grew fiercer. What if he laid his truth bare, and it was met with silence or disdain? Would that be the end of his fragile connection with his children, or would it offer them lessons about resilience? Jake reached the end of his draft, the tension coiling tighter in his chest. He meticulously proofread the letter once more, the editor's address glaring at him from the page. A part of him yearned to release it into the world, to grapple with the consequences, but an undercurrent of hesitation lingered. He gazed out the window, the world bustling with life, and wondered if bravery was less about the absence of fear and more about acting in spite of it. The reality felt crisper than ever, a ticking clock urging him forward as he made the decision to layer his final revisions with a renewed urgency. Could he embrace his deepest fears and share them without shielding the truths that could potentially resonate with others? The daunting day approached, where he would confront not just the editor, but his own inhibitions. One question loomed. When would he finally summon the courage to send the letter, to flip the page of his own narrative into the unknown. The answer was approaching fast, and with it, the realization that his journey was far from over. Jake's heart raced as he sat before the blank screen, the cursor blinking as if mocking his uncertainty. The initial thrill of writing had now transformed into a deep-seated dread. With each passing moment, he contemplated the implications of what sending that letter might mean. It was more than just a message. It represented a potential pivot in his life, a leap toward the identity he had been shaping in his mind. With fresh coffee steaming beside him, he attempted to pour his thoughts into coherent sentences, but the weight of potential failure pressed down upon him like an anchor, holding him in place. The idea of a rejection felt more tangible than acceptance, stirring a visceral anxiety that threatened to stifle his creativity. He thought of the editor, someone who held the power to validate his journey or nullify his aspirations with a single email. Lost in thought, he caught sight of one of Leo's sketches sprawled across the table, a vibrant, chaotic depiction of a dragon and a knight. The unfiltered imagination of his son flooded Jake with a sense of nostalgia. It reminded him of the innocence that fueled dreams without the cage of fear. In that moment, Jake understood that his children viewed bravery differently. They saw it as unrestrained exploration, a joyful pursuit of creativity, unhindered by societal expectations. He struck the keys with newfound resolve, channeling the lessons he was learning through their innocent eyes. The father character was not merely a reflection of his fears, but also a gateway to triumphant bravery, a character who wrestled with self-doubt, yet emerged refreshed by love and wonder. As Jake wrote, he articulated not just the struggles of parenting, but the courage it took to choose passion over comfort. His words transformed from shaky confessions into a manifesto for personal bravery, a reminder that loneliness and vulnerability could be powerful companions in the pursuit of dreams. Midway through that transforming thought, a sudden ping pulled him from his fervent writing. An email notification had popped up. It bore the magazine's name in bold. His heart skittered as he clicked on the message. The email contained an invitation for him to join a panel discussion on the intersection of creativity and parenting. Could this be an opportunity? The thought surfaced in his mind. The invitation felt unsettling, yet invigorating, a chance to step into the public eye. But with that wave of excitement came another sobering realization. What if he failed to meet those expectations? The panel would require him to share his insights, articulate his ideas in real time, and disarm a room full of strangers with his vulnerability. He stood up, pacing around the writing nook, processing the implications. What if this was a doorway leading to even more rejection? What if it distracted him from honing his writing? Or could it radically alter his trajectory toward the success he craved? The internal battle raged on. This new path beckoned ambitious possibilities, like a fragile flower pushing through the cold earth. Yet it carried its own risks. Jake felt that familiar uncertainty creeping back in. Was he truly prepared to face an audience? Would his thoughts, raw and unfiltered, resonate? Or would he end up revealing too much, opening himself to ridicule? Jake leaned against the wall, staring at the window. The bustling world beyond contrasted sharply with his introspection. Suddenly, the notion crystallized. Perhaps fear itself was a mirror reflecting what he truly valued. It wasn't just about the letter, the potential panel, or the magazine. It was about claiming his identity as a writer, unafraid to share his vision with the world. The decision pushed against the walls of his consciousness as he weighed his options. The moment approached where he had to either embrace the opportunity or retreat back into uncertainty. He imagined Mia and Leo's faces, encouragement glowing within their excited gazes. As he reached for the mouse to open the magazine's website, a new urgency unfurled inside him. He needed to seize this moment. The writing could wait, but he had to step outside of his past self and into the belief that he had something worthwhile to say. But what would happen once he made the leap? The world felt increasingly unpredictable. Was he truly ready to face what lay beyond the door? His hand hovered over the mouse, pulse quickening. The uncharted path loomed larger than ever, and all Jake could think was, "It's time to face my apex fears, and hope I can rise to meet them." Jake's breath hitched as he finally clicked the link to the magazine's site. The screen blinked back at him with renewed possibilities. The invitation lingered in his mind, an opportunity for connection, for sharing a part of himself that had enshrouded in doubt for too long. He took a deep breath, letting it fill him with the clarity he desperately sought. He realized that this panel could serve as a demonstration of his capabilities, a launch pad rather than a landing pad. He willed himself to open the email and draft a response, each keystroke resonating with his pulse. His fingers flew over the keyboard, composing an enthusiastic acceptance that felt like a revelation, a lifeline reaching out from a fraying tether. But as the excitement built within him, so did a series of doubts, their whispering echoes nearly drowned out by the shadows in his mind. What if he froze on stage? What if his words didn't connect? He grappled with the potential reality of his limits when faced with others' scrutiny. Would they see through the carefully crafted facade of a competent dad turned writer and reveal him instead as the imposter he feared he might be? He closed his eyes, and suddenly, Leo's wild sketches sprang to life behind his eyelids, a dazzling parade of creativity and fearlessness. In that instant, clarity surged forth. Leo unwittingly illustrated what Jake had to confront, not simply the audience, but also the insecurities he harbored. Fueled by this realization, Jake felt a surge of determination. "What I lack in experience, I make up for in insight," he reiterated silently, acknowledging the value of his unique perspective as a father navigating creativity and ambition. It may not be an illustrious pedigree in public speaking, but it was rooted in authenticity, a trait that often resonates deeply. He returned to his writing nook, that sacred space now charged with renewed purpose. He began drafting his initial thoughts for the panel discussion. His approach was not to deliver a polished performance, but rather to engage in a conversation about the heart of parenting and creativity, the failures, the struggles, and the unexpected joys. His narrative started to take shape, a blend of personal anecdotes reflective of his journey. The nights spent working while shadows danced around him, encouraging his child to find joy in imperfection. As the words flowed, Jake recognized a strange sensation creeping in. Anticipation and anxiety stood side by side, morphing into excitement. He was building the bridge between vulnerability and courage, piecing himself together with carefully selected words, each confident enough to stand on their own. Later that evening, he settled into bed with a sense of accomplishment. The weight of self-doubt began to lift. Yet, nestled within that relief was an underlying current of tension. The impending panel could either affirm his journey or offer a sobering moment of reckoning. While he felt more comfortable sharing his thoughts, he still wrestled with the weight of external validation that awaited him. Mia entered the room, her vibrant energy drawing him back to reality. "Dad, can I show you something?" Her eyes shone with enthusiasm. They settled beside each other on the couch, where Mia revealed a diary filled with her dreams and aspirations, her ambitions a mirror to his own. Watching her, Jake found a flexibility within himself. Perhaps it was the legacy of hope he wished to pass down that was his true motivator. In her uninhibited sharing, he saw the essence of resilience he needed to embrace in his own journey. Yet, as night cast its shadows around him, uncertainty still loomed. Would this step forward be a triumph, or simply another reminder of his fears? As he tucked Mia in, a notion sparked for the next step: to gather more stories from the community, transforming the panel into a collective conversation rather than a solitary performance. How would he approach others for their stories, and would their vulnerability mirror his own? Jake knew he was on the cusp of something larger than himself, the beginning of a dialogue that could resonate. The thought sent a new thrill through him. What he discovered might just be the gateway he hadn't anticipated. The world felt both daunting and brimming with promise, and as those uncertain questions lingered, he leaned closer to that edge between doubt and discovery. Would he be ready to confront what lay ahead, not just for himself, but for those around him. The next morning arrived, and the sun filtered through Jake's window, casting a bright glow on his face. He rubbed the remnants of sleep from his eyes and felt the weight of the day ahead settle on his shoulders. This panel was not just an opportunity to speak. It was a challenge he had to face. With a breakfast of toast and coffee fueling his resolve, he found himself grappling with complex emotions. Excitement and fear tangled together like threads of a fraying sweater. Jake recalled the stories he longed to share, memories intertwined with lessons learned. As he suited up for the day, he made a mental note to reach out to others he admired, inviting them to contribute their voices to the discussion. This was his chance to create a dialogue that transcended his own experiences, to explore the complexities of their shared lives. Would they respond? The possibility of drawing them into his narrative both thrilled and terrified him. As he turned on his laptop, he opened a fresh email draft, mentally crafting personalized messages to a handful of individuals, friends, mentors, and even acquaintances from his past. Each one represented a unique perspective, a different story woven into the fabric of parenthood and creativity. He hesitated, questioning whether he was overstepping boundaries, but as Mia's bright laugh echoed in his memory, he contemplated the lesson. Vulnerability invites connection, even in the fragile spaces of uncertainty. Focused, he began tapping out invitations, expressing, "I believe your story can enrich a conversation I'm having about the intersection of parenting and creativity. I'd love to include you." With each name listed, his doubts momentarily retreated, replaced by the excitement of potential collaboration. Yet beneath that excitement lay a swirling concern. What if no one replied? What if he turned to look back at an empty space instead of a gathering of voices? The reeling thoughts clawed at him. Then it hit him. Failure wasn't an end. It was a teacher. Realizing this deep sentiment stirred something within Jake. If others chose to share their narratives, he would harness those threads to strengthen the panel. But if they didn't, it meant he'd need to stand firm in his truth alone. After sending the emails, he felt the weight of his decision press down even more heavily. The moment felt charged, resonant with both hope and dread. He began jotting down the bones of his narrative, drawing on the joy and struggles he faced. He penned his dream, creating an opportunity where parents could feel seen and heard, each story a testament to resilience. In the afternoon, he received a reply from Clara, a fellow writer and mother known for her refreshing insights. "I would love to join you," she wrote. Heart racing, he welcomed a wave of encouragement. There was hope. Others could join this journey of shared experiences, and the burden of his imposter syndrome lessened just slightly. However, as he basked in this moment of victory, doubt returned with renewed ferocity. The looming panel was only days away. The very idea of standing before an audience, vulnerable and unguarded, each gaze a mirror reflecting his deepest insecurity, made him hesitant. Could he truly tap into this reservoir of strength he was beginning to uncover? As he lay in bed, perusing through Clara's work for inspiration, only one thought emerged firmly within him. He needed to confront this fear head-on. No amount of preparation could erase the potential for discomfort. And yet, embracing that discomfort could pivot his entire experience. Buoyed by Clara's involvement, Jake reached out once more to other potential panelists with growing courage, feeling the rhythm of hope adjusting his usual tempo of self-doubt. Each email sent defied his earlier reservations, charting a course towards an unpredictable horizon. But as the last click of the send button echoed in his mind, the nagging thought returned. Was he truly ready for what lay ahead? Could he navigate this stage, this opportunity to unveil his authentic self? Or would it all unravel into the mess of uncertainty he desperately sought to escape? The clock ticked ominously, and the deadline loomed with merciless precision. As Jake stared into the void of possibilities that awaited him, a single question emerged in sharp focus. When the moment arrived, would he stand firm on that stage, and who would he be once he did? The day finally arrived, a turning point for Jake that felt monumental. In the mirror, he practiced his introduction one last time. The reflection staring back at him was filled with anxious hope. He had clasped at his dreams for far too long, and the panel was not only an opportunity to discuss parenthood and creativity, but also a moment to affirm his identity as a writer. As he entered the venue, laughter and light chatter from fellow panelists filled the air. The divergence of perspectives offered by each participant created a vibrant tapestry, and Jake's heart fluttered in anticipation. Clara greeted him warmly, her enthusiasm infectious. "We're all in this together," she reminded him, her smile radiating confidence. Sitting in the green room, Jake observed the casual dynamics between the other panelists, their ease starkly contrasting his racing pulse. He catalogued each of their stories, the narratives dancing around him, fostering an urgency in his chest. They did not know his burdens. They did not carry the weight of expectations as he did. But then, in a defining moment, a realization struck him. He had no obligation to veer from his authentic path. Each panelist's journey differed, yet they all intersected on the common goal of connection, an idea that rippled through every narrative shared. He didn't need to erase his uncertainties. He needed to acknowledge them, harness them. The moderator called everyone to the stage, and as Jake took his seat, he felt the spotlight warm his skin, illuminating the shadows in his heart. His chest tightened in recognition of the challenge ahead, but he also understood this was the manifestation of his transformation. With each question posed, the dialogue grew richer, laced with laughter and vulnerability. When it was Jake's turn to share, he gave a measured inhale and began. "My story has become a journey woven with loss and hope, punctuated by the laughter of my children." Suddenly, a calm settled over him. In that moment, he embraced the opportunity to be bare. No rehearsed perfection, just his raw narrative spilling into the shared space. "I am a single father, grappling with the weight of my past, striving to find balance in a world that often feels disjointed." As the words flowed freely, he saw reflection in the eyes of the audience. Sympathy and recognition resonated back. Vulnerability did not peel back skin, it built bridges. He spoke of mornings spent wrestling with self-doubt, and how storytelling had granted him a new lens through which to parent. "It was only when I involved my children in my writing that I reconceptualized my fears. Together, we began crafting stories of dragons that reflected our struggles, incorporating laughter that emerged through the pain." The audience was engaged, their expressions shifting with understanding. With each anecdote, he made connections between personal anecdotes and universal themes. He punctuated his narrative with humor and insight, each laugh from the crowd cradling him gently. A new era dawned. He embraced the lessons he had learned through passionate fear, and there, in that moment of authenticity, he felt closer to the man he desired to be. Once the panel concluded and applause filled the room, Jake stepped down. Emotions cascaded through him, generating deep satisfaction. The warm-spirited exchange with the audience had ignited a sense of belonging he hadn't recognized before. They valued his story, and in that acknowledgement, he saw reflected possibilities for his future work. Days turned into weeks, and as he settled back into the familiar embrace of routine, everything had shifted. His resolve only grew stronger, validated by a network of individuals who saw him not merely as a parent or a writer, but as a storyteller capable of depth and connection. Personal achievements unfurled like petals in the sun. He submitted his first piece for the magazine, the invitation now feeling less like an uncertainty and more like an essential step in the evolution of his artistic journey. The resulting piece would echo far beyond acceptance. It would showcase his growth, reflecting both his narrative and the stories of others who, like him, navigated complexity. As he pressed send, the act felt liberating, a release of pent-up aspirations clothed in vulnerability and passion. A week later, he received the call informing him that his work was accepted. The elation that surged through him was palpable. With concrete achievements, he demonstrated that personal transformations were indeed attainable. In nurturing creativity alongside his children, He not only shaped his pursuits, but nurtured their budding imaginations, enabling a shared journey of growth. At that moment of triumph, Jake stood in solidarity with the version of himself he once feared to embrace. He was solid, confident, intricately woven in purpose. His restless pursuit for fulfillment had transformed a single dad's story into a narrative of resilience, echoing on the pathway to achieving true professional acknowledgement. His evolution was evident. From the burdens of despair, he now emerged renewed, filled with gratitude and courage, showing that vulnerability often holds the key to the most extraordinary transformations. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the channel. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration in their own journeys. Don't wait even one more second.